Hello, I'm Anthony. Welcome back to the MS-20-V tutorial series. We're going to deal with envelope generators today. We've got two of them in this synthesizer, generators 1 and 2, and there are quite a few differences between them. It's not just a case of replicating the same functionality. And there's an interesting quirk about this synthesizer in that envelope generator is arguably the more important of the two, because that's the one that controls the overall volume of the synthesizer. Even though we're not dealing so much with the patch bay at the moment, there's a little visual clue as to what's going on. Because here's the envelope generator 2, and if you trace this little line, you can see that it points into the amplifier. That's indicating that there's a default or normal connection between envelope generator 2 and the volume of this thing. The amplifier is where the overall volume is determined, and this link here tells us that envelope generator 2 can do something about it. Here we are with our standard default sound. Press a key, hear the sound, let the key go, sound stops. I'm going to turn the attack time of envelope generator 2 up. Let's make it a second. Now I'm going to press a key. And now you hear a gentle fade in. That fade in lasted a second. At the end of that 1 second period, the synthesizer tone is at maximum volume. So that's what the attack time does. It's a period of time after the initial key is pressed over which the envelope is gradually introduced. Now it's a slightly unusual word to describe what's going on to call it an attack, but that's basically just a principle of the concept of envelopes. In fact, envelope 2 is probably the most common of all types of envelope. It's called an ADSR envelope, or attack, decay, sustain and release. And you can see all of those words listed: attack, decay, sustain, release. We'll deal with hold shortly. The next stage is decay, but to demonstrate what decay does, I also need to introduce the third stage, which is sustain, because what's going to happen over an amount of time specified by this knob is that the volume of the tone is going to decrease down to the sustain level. Well, if the sustain level's at more or less maximum, it's slightly off maximum actually, I'll pull it down to 50%. It means we're going to spend this long, pretty much a second, getting to maximum volume, and then we're going to come away from maximum volume. We're going to decay down to about 50%. Let's do that. And you saw that in the oscilloscope. We reached our maximum volume and then we came down, we decayed down to the sustain level. If the sustain level's at maximum, the decay time has nothing to do. It's still there, it's still taking 1.193 seconds doing something, but the thing that it's doing is nothing. It's decaying from maximum to maximum. And so we hear our initial attack period, but from that point onwards we've just got this constant static maximum volume. So let's reintroduce the sustain level so that we can really clearly hear and see the decay phase. And now I'm going to introduce the final phase, which is release, which means over the process of 2.579 seconds, once I let the key go, the sound is going to fade away gently. It's no longer going to stop abruptly. Attack, decay, sustain. I'm going to let the key go now, and we release away. We fade away to silence. Now I can introduce hold time, which is the one knob we haven't talked about yet. Let's give ourselves 2 seconds of hold. This means when I let go of the key, the volume is going to stay at the sustain level for 2 seconds before entering the release phase. So that means technically this envelope is described as an attack, decay, sustain, hold, release envelope. Attack, decay. Now I'm holding my key down, that sound will continue to generate that volume until I let the key go. Now, there's the 2 seconds of hold, and there we fade away to nothing. All of that was the envelope in classic mode. If I switch to modern mode, hold time's going to disappear and it's going to be replaced with decay curve. The decay curve is specifying the shape of the decay phase. Instead of it being linear, we're now able to specify a shape to apply to it. If I drag this thing all the way down, the range is from -20 up to +20, which is a bit random. But if I go down to -20, it's going to be a sharp step. So now, after we've hit our attack level, which is the maximum volume that the synth can generate, there's going to be a sharp drop down to the sustain level, and then it'll hold at that new level. Let's hear that. See that kind of spike? It wasn't instantaneous, it was sharp. If I introduce that to +20, so what's going to happen here is that when I press the key, we're going to attack up to the maximum volume, we're going to hold at the maximum volume for the entire decay time, then there'll be the sharp notch down to the sustain level. Up, and then step down quickly, and then we hold at the sustain level, and then we fade away. Now 10 points if you can spot what the Envelope Generator 2 also does. We have a look back in the sections that we've already seen. In the two filter banks, the high pass and low pass, we have EG2/external. We're not worrying about external yet, that's the patch bay, we've not dealt with it, but we have just dealt with Envelope Generator 2. So what we can basically infer from these labels is that Envelope Generator 2 is normaled into the two filters. So now instead of having a periodic modulation effect on the cutoff as we did when we were playing with the modulation generator, you heard it pulse at whatever speed that modulation generator was operating at. Now we've got a one-time effect. If I introduce the maximum amount of modulation from Envelope Generator 2, it means that this envelope that we just generated, let's get back to something relatively straightforward. So we've got an attack, we've got a decay, we've got a lower sustain level, and we've got some release. All of that is going to apply to the filter. So if I set my cutoff frequency at about 1 kilohertz, let's hear what that does to the filter. So now you're hearing exactly the same envelope effect being applied to the filter. It's also being applied to the volume. So those two things are happening simultaneously. So this time just try to concentrate on the tone of the sound rather than the volume. Getting brighter, getting duller, holding, and then as the tone fades away in volume, it's also having its upper frequencies attenuated. But when we look back at the pitch modulation section, that's normal to Envelope Generator 1. So let's have a look at EG1. A different set of controls for this thing. I'm actually going to throw away all of those changes, get back to my simple default tone, so everything's nice and simple. Envelope Generator 1 has an attack time and release, but no decay or sustain. Let's just deal with those two features first. I'll dial some attack time in and a nice big chunk of release time. I just pressed the key then and realised that with no release time on our amplifier envelope, we're only going to hear one side of that. I'll do it anyway. There's the pitch going up, but of course when I let the key go, the sound disappears immediately. I need to dial some release time in order for us to hear that pitch come back down. There's it going up, I'll let go of the key, and there's it going back down again. So Envelope Generator 1 is normaled into pitch modulation. While we're here, we'll have a quick look at this switch. You can see at the moment it's linked to both VCO 1 and 2, but I can make it just modulate VCO 1 on its own or VCO 2 on its own. Pretty straightforward. At the top of Envelope Generator 1, we've got a set of options that EG2 doesn't have. At the moment we're set on gate mode, which is the standard mode of operation. When I press a key on a keyboard, I'm basically operating a gate. I'm pressing the key to open a gate. The gate's staying open while I've got the key pressed down. When I let the key go, the gate is closing. So all of that is completely normal behavior. If I switch to trigger mode, it means the moment I press the key, I'm triggering this envelope. This envelope is then going to do its thing regardless of anything else I subsequently do. The easiest way to demonstrate the difference between a gate and a trigger is to start off with gate. I'll press the key down and hold it. So here's me holding the key down, the gate is open. The envelope release cycle doesn't trigger until I let the key go. When I put it in trigger mode, that entire envelope is going to do its thing and it's going to start from the moment I press the key. So I've still got the key held down and now the envelope's done. And then I let the key go and it fades away. The third option is loop, which basically means that the envelope will fire again and again and again. The moment it's finished its release cycle, it'll go right back to the beginning and do the same thing again. Just holding the key down here and it'll repeat that envelope forever. Now, all of these examples that I've shown you up to this point have been completely standard synthesizer fare. We dealt with the oscillators to get tone up and running, then we've had a look at the filter banks, and we've seen the two primary types of modulators: periodic modulators, called the modulation generator, and the envelope generators we've dealt with in today's episode. But now that we've got those modulation tools available to us, the modulation generator and the envelope generator, we can start having a look at how they can be routed to other different locations in the synthesizer. And this is where the patch bay is going to become involved, because everything that we've done up until now has been completely standard or normal behavior, and we can override a lot of those features, and that's what we'll do in the patch bay. We'll start having a look at that next time. Hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please hit the like button. I'll see you next time. Thanks.